Welcome into the YWCA Hour here on 93.7 The Ticket. I am Rico, and I am joined by the two hosts of the show, Maisha Essex and Karen Bell. Dancy, not Darcy, Dancy. We're going to get the intro right. I promise you.
Thank you.
We're joining you another pre-recording, but we are joining you here on a beautiful day here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm guessing, I'm betting it's going to be a beautiful day.
Yes.
It definitely is. It's already a beautiful morning. So yeah, beautiful day.
And I'll let you guys take it over.
Hey, so Rico, today we wanted to really talk about one of the, all of our work is important, but one of the pieces that really defines us, who we are as an organization. You know, we are a local organization of a global association, YWCA USA, as well as YWCA World. And our mission, is the elimination of racism, empowerment of women and girls. And we've been talking a lot about on past shows about our different programs and how we identify with our mission. Today, we want to press a little bit more on the elimination of racism piece and how we do that and how we engage the community in that work. A couple of years ago, we were approached by our Human Services Division of the county, which received money through the state for juvenile prevention programs. And so we work closely with other nonprofits, with the prosecutor's office, the juvenile division, juvenile judges, LPS, and a host of other organizations that work with youth trying to help prevent them moving further into the system. Along the way, we were approached about engaging in DEI training and facilitation that promotes equity awareness and education. And so, through the county as well as the city, we have started working with a group that is called GARE. And GARE is the acronym for the Government Alliance for Racial Equity. It's a national organization where professionals that are government uh, hires, they actually can engage in what is called GARE, and it's a platform for them to learn more about racial equity and how identifying with challenges for those of different cultures as they come into their departments and in their public meeting spaces, and how they engage and work with the general public. And so their goal was, how do we become more sensitive and more understanding of folks' backgrounds? There could be language barriers and other barriers that could maybe cause misunderstanding, but also how do we help to promote a more diverse community? So as we were approached from the state, and I said, and as the city, to now engage with these GARE professionals, we develop a platform for training. We have a curriculum that we have designed and is tailored specifically for this group. We now in our second cohort. We started last year with GARE 1.0. We trained 60 individuals, meeting once a month, half a day sessions, working with these government officials, and some of them are elected officials as well as staff in all these different departments. And so that ended up being successful. We did a few tweaks to the program. There are a lot of individuals that want to be a part of it because personally, within their core values, they always want to make sure that they're promoting and working and interacting with the public, through a very transparent and diverse lens. And so, Maisha is going to talk a little bit about some of the pieces of the curriculum and how we actually do that. And we also take them through a final project. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well, but wanted to introduce the listeners to what we're doing around our diversity and equity and inclusion programming.
Yeah, as Karen said, she just mentioned just one of the organizations that we or groups that we work with and that we've trained through our platform. Some other groups have been like the Mental Health Association. I just recently did a training with Parks and Rec on identity, and we just really like to tailor again our curriculum to what is needed and what is asked of by the organization that wants us to come in. But typically, our layout is pretty, much the same across the board, which
Yeah.
is we explore self identity first. And then we go into that education piece about, what's microaggressions and what are we talking about when we say, privilege, the importance of language. And then we end off with the action piece. We know a lot of people and a lot of organizations say, hey, we love the education, but what can we do? What can we take outside of the education so that we can actually implement this into our environment so that it is more welcoming, it is more inclusive, and it is more reflective of the community that we serve. And so, in regards to like the identity work that we do, we really like to focus on what is your values. Why do you think the way that you think? And we talk about the cycle of socialization, right? How we start off being socialized from birth, right? Our
Mhm.
society here, pink is for girl, blue is for boy, and
Right.
some of the things that just happens um, from like the parents and from the parents' point of view and lens. Then we go into the socializing agents, which we can all think of. That's church, that's school,
Mhm.
that's some of the Boy Scout, Girl Scouts, and some of the
Right.
organizations you belong
Exactly.
to. You
Yep.
start to go into that. And as we go around that kind of circle of socialization, you get to a point where you can either continue the cycle or exit, right,
Mhm.
through education. And I love to talk about the different steps within that cycle of socialization. So I always give an example from myself. When I was younger, my parents, I wasn't able to have nerves. I don't know about anybody else. I don't know about, but when I didn't discover I had nerves until I was grown, because anytime I said, and of course you're repeating what your parents said, I heard
Exactly.
it's getting on my nerves, you're getting on my nerves. And when I'd be like, oh, it's getting on my nerves, you don't got no nerves? What,
Where you get
where
nerves
you
from?
get nerves from? And so I didn't know I had a nerve until I got older. But what that was, teaching me at the time was, about feelings and what are the feelings that children should or should not have and how they should or should not be validated at that
Right.
point. And so I was
Mhm.
already being socialized to think like, okay, as a child, I, I'm not supposed to have nerves. And part of the
Mhm.
reason why I couldn't have a nerve is because I didn't have a job. So let's
Exactly.
just let's be
Yes.
clear about that. You don't have a nerve
Right.
because you don't have a job. Whose house are you providing for? So, and so what happened was when I got older and I started to work with kids, and I started working with kids right out of college, at middle schools, which I always say is my favorite age group, middle schoolers. And when I first started working there, I realized that I was repeating some of those things, and my thoughts and interactions was like, go to class, go to what? Listen, you really don't have a problem. Go to
Right.
class. And so
You are not
you're
stressed.
right. You were
They're
not
always
stressed.
stressed.
Yes, it's not stress. It's not that big a deal. Just go to class. Listen. And then, I started to realize, of course, that a lot of the times when they were coming to me, they just needed somebody to listen to, right? I do believe and I know that even as a young person, there were some things, yeah, just you need to move along. Like it's okay, let it go. Let's
Mhm.
talk about
Mhm.
we can let it go and keep moving. But also that even as a child, when I was told you don't have a nerve or, why you sleeping in past a certain time where you're not paying any bills or anything like that, that it's still the feeling still mattered to me. The situation
Mhm.
still happened, to me. And I had a feeling about it. And even as a child going through that, when I got older as an adult, because I was so socialized in that thinking that kids only have certain thoughts, that I forgot what I felt when I was younger because I was starting to
Mhm.
perpetuate that. Like I did feel like I needed to say something that it hurt my feelings, that something. And so I had a chance to, as I work with middle schoolers, listen to them a little bit more. I was able to kind of change my attitude a little bit more
Mhm.
about it because, the feelings are most of the time, validated, right? And you do need to address them, whether it's to address them and it can turn into something else or to address them and help them understand that we can still move along. How do we process these feelings? And so we just, yeah, continue to talk about just why do we think the way that we do? Do you ever sit down and wonder
Yeah.
a little bit about where did this thought come from? Where do these actions actually come from? Um,
Mhm.
we do this training exercise. We've done it with college students where we talk about schools and what did you learn from schools? Like what did it teach you, whether good or bad?
Mhm.
Because it is a socializing agent. It's there to help us function in society the way that our society is set up. And so, Karen, if you want to give an example of maybe of, what maybe was taught to you by your parents, or when you think of what you learned in school in
Oh
regards to
yes.
socializing. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a generational example here. because as a small child, I went to a school where it was still majority white students. And so it was an unspoken rule. So this was a norm that when it was time for the class to line up, the white children lined up first, and then the black kids were able to line up. And in my classroom, first grade, they always say you remember your best teacher and your worst teacher. I was in Miss Moore's room. And so we were always, the three of us, two black girls and one black boy, we were always at the tail end. And one day I decided the teacher would come out at recess, put her hand up, and that meant time to line up. White kids run first, black kids in the back. Well, every small child, you want to be the line leader. And so I had practiced being the line leader at home. I was determined I was going to be the line leader one day. When she came out, she raised her hand. Everybody raced up to the line, and I raced first. I didn't even play at recess because I was determined I'm going to leave this room walking from the end of the playground back to the classroom. Well, when I got there first, Debbie Hammond came and stood in front of me because Debbie Hammond had been socialized to understand that children that look like her, they get to be the line leaders and not children like me. And so I pushed Debbie, and Debbie pushed me back. And so we were tussling. And so the teacher put both of us in back of the line. However, she put Debbie right in front of me. So on the way back to the building, little Karen kicked Debbie all the way back to the building. And unfortunately, my sister, because this is when schools would go from kindergarten all the way to like ninth grade, my sister happened to see it and she told on me. But the lesson in all of that is, as Maisha is saying, we all come here equal and we all come as a clean slate. It's how we're socialized that we develop these pieces of understanding. Maisha learned she didn't have nerves. I was learning that little girls that look like me, I could only be second best, or I had to be at the back. But in my household, I was daddy's princess. So how dare they try to put daddy's princess in back of the line? As I said, I had practiced lining how I would lead that class back to that building. And so these are the kinds of things that we explore in our training. And that's why implicit bias is such a huge part of what we do. We have to peel back the layers of who we are as individuals, where we learn the way of thinking and how we view the world, and how that now impacts how we interact with others. And so those are such key pieces. A lot of folks come into our training with a different set of expectations about what it will be. It will just be about how they interact in the greater community, how they interact with teams at work. All of that is important. But in order to get to that, we have to find that real sense of self and why we think that the way we do. And that's why we go through so many different levels of looking inward before we even start to address the outward piece.
How hard did you guys find it to reach that point where you knew that there was something going on inside of you that you realized, I have to change this, and then going through the process and actually changing that, like things that you were told as a child, things that you learned as a child that now you start doing as an adult and you think, I shouldn't be doing this. How hard was it for you guys to like move past that?
It is really hard because it's a lot of that self-reflection, work, and really digging deep into yourself. But a lot of times you can identify it because it didn't work then and it doesn't work now. Right. When I was thinking about myself as a child, and me not having nerves, did my nerves really go away? I may not put my name to that wasn't the name of it, but I was still mad. I was still anxious. I was still all those things. Like them just saying you do not have nerves does not take it away. And when I, was teaching again, I was very young. I had just graduated college. But when I was, in the middle school, I realized it didn't work. You just telling someone to, okay, it's okay, brush, go back. It does not work. You'll still see those same behaviors. And so if you're really kind of in tuned with what you're doing, and that's kind of the catalyst for me, that I really wanted to be, really wanted to connect with the kids, right? And I really wanted to do my job well and be there. And so I had to think, what is working and what's not working, and then
Mhm.
why. And part of that, and it's very hard, is to realize you're part of the why it's maybe not working.
Right.
you know,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people, they're afraid of that, of being a
Mhm.
part of the problem, because
Mhm.
they're afraid of the label that comes with that,
Exactly.
right? And we do this with our trainings. We always let people know so that we create this environment, this dynamic where we can come from truth, because that's the only way you're going to start, is if you come
Yes.
from the truth. So you have to get in a
Mhm.
vulnerable place, but also to say, I can recognize what how my parents raised me. Part of it was survival mode, right?
Right.
They were trying to survive
Exactly.
themselves, right? So I'm
Yes.
trying to put food on the table, trying to do all these things. I may not have the ability or the capacity to do some of those other things, that you may need or want. I
Mhm.
just saw another woman who did a podcast, and she was asked about her children, and she said, "I was a great father, but wasn't a good mother." And when they asked to her to explain a little
Oh.
bit why, she said, "Because I was a good provider and all these things." And that's what she attributes to being a mother and a father. I want to preface
Right.
it that way. That,
Interesting.
I was a great provider and things like that, but that
Mhm.
nurturing side I wasn't able to do because we had to get food on the table.
Right.
Basically, is what her. And so I understand that as a child and a product of parents who just needed to get the rent paid, food on the table, and things like that. That you can't always do some of these other things, right? So I do not judge them. And that's part of the
Mhm.
problem when participants come in. They think in order to look back, then you have to judge and say it's wrong.
Right.
I do not judge that. I do
Yeah.
not say it's
Yeah.
wrong. I am just learning and creating the world in the space that now I want to step and walk in. No judgment on the back end. So we have to start
Yes.
from there. Is I'm not
Mhm.
going to judge, because I know, if you know your parents, you know your people,
Yeah.
they've tried their best, right? So I'm not going to
Mhm.
judge that. I'm just going to say, this is where I learned it from.
Mhm.
This is why I think the way that I do.
Mhm.
But because of how I want to move forward, I'm gonna go ahead and just tweak it a little bit, and sit down and figure out, well, how can I do that? What are some things that I can do to make sure I'm exiting the circle and not repeating it? Because then we become the socializing agent as we get older. We are now the school. We are now the church. We are now,
Right.
the outside organizations.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing about it, Rico, this work is very difficult.
Mhm.
So when you ask how difficult it is, truly it is. I would imagine the majority of folks that are engaged in this kind of education and awareness work, this was not their intention. You do not intend to do this. But what happens is the life experiences that you have. And as you become a person that has developed civility
Mhm.
and you have community engagement and community awareness, sometimes it just kind of pulls you into that. When we are engaged in training and it's been a 4-hour block, we are wiped out at the end of that 4-hour block. And people think, well, you do this all the time, and we get great reviews on the work that we're doing and all of that. But we still live through all those experiences when we're showing that. And that's probably the biggest piece and the skill set that we have. It's based on what we experience. And our goal is to help others, that when you go really inner and look at inner self, then that helps you to understand why you react to the world that the way that you do.
Yeah.
So it is difficult work. It is difficult work.
Yeah, it's very difficult work. And we find that when we're doing this work, we're always happy when we create a space. And when I say
Yes.
we, us as facilitators and the participants, create a space where you can be truthful, because some of the things that are
Mhm.
shared, is just amazing as to why people feel the way that they do. I grew up in a small town. This is what
Yes.
my grandpa and grandma used to say. This is how my dad and mom reacted
Yes.
to certain people. They actually told me not to go to this certain side of town. And then we
Mhm.
we go a little bit deeper. Well, why wouldn't you go to that certain part of town? Oh, because of, we heard there was, high rate and crime. Okay, so then what do you
Yes.
think about those people who live there? Right. And then we start to go a little bit deeper, because, if somebody tells you, I'm from, and I'm just throwing out a street, don't come at me. Like, I'm from Ninth and South, like,
Right.
I don't want no one to, what do you think about those people? Just something automatically changing
Yeah.
you when someone says, I'm from that side of town. And then why? Oh, because my father. Okay. But have you ever experienced that? Have you been down there? Right. Sometimes we have to go and
Mhm.
actually search for the truth, especially when we have bias, because our brain is just trying to create a shortcut. Someone said to you, this is
Mhm.
what happens. So your brain creates a shortcut, to say, this is how I now need to engage in the world. And so we say, well, what's the truth behind it?
Right.
Because your brain could be, not that it's lying, it doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know the difference between one situation happening and there being a pattern of something. And so it's just trying to help you out at this point. So we do talk about that as in what is the real truth. Have you yourself, experienced
Exactly.
this? And so it can, be a little bit hard and difficult, but we find that a lot of the participants in there, they want to explore that part of themselves because, again, as Karen said, that's how we connect with ourselves and with everyone else around us. That's how our identity is, how we want to be seen in the world, which impacts how we want to be treated in the world.
Exactly.
And so we want people to understand just how important it is. Your identity and your values is just as important to somebody else. And so when we're talking about how you engage and we start talking about language and how you address people,
Right.
the same way you feel a very strong connection to a certain value to you, they do to them as well, right? And so we get into maybe pronouns and why we have and the connection with that, and well, why. And so this honestly allows people, when they do self-reflection work and to figure out what is so important to them, that they want everybody to respect it and to address it, because this is really their identity. It allows us then to connect it to other people's identity as well. And so that really creates like this bridge into seeing other people's perspective.
Yeah, we get really deep into intersectionality, and a lot of people, they're unaware of what that is and how now they can do a better understanding of themselves. So it's very interesting when you start to see that, and you can actually see the ahas behind it.
Have you ever been doing something like that with somebody and realized at some point that you had some biases that you hadn't discussed with maybe yourself or with anybody else, where you're talking with somebody about something and then you start thinking something, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not right, I shouldn't be thinking that?
Oh yeah,
All the time. All the time.
It's not even you got to be in a training. Like,
Right.
I'll be honest, it doesn't have to even be in a training. Training actually helps me become more increasingly aware of when I'm like, ooh,
okay,
why you think that? Right? What did you just say in your head? Ooh, you got to dig a little deep there. So it helps me catch it, because a lot of times it's unconscious for us. So a lot of times we're not catching it at all. And so what the training actually helps participants do is catch it. And we've had participants come back and they will share some of their stories, and they'll say, well, oh, this is what happened. And, I was able to like catch it, like, oh, I think I have a bias there, or why wouldn't I help this person, or why did I cross the street, or things like that. So yeah, it happens. Honestly, it's not just that to training where I think like, you have a little bit of a bias.
And
like
that's
one of my things with when I discovered was sometimes I travel to smaller towns for different things that I do, and a bias that I have is getting gas after dark in a small town. And I'm gonna be very honest,
right?
So I gas up because I don't know, right? And that is like, that's a fear, and that can be a bias, and I have to talk to myself like, well, is anything ever? You can't assume, we always try to protect ourselves, right? Because we don't know, and being women of color, we understand in this society it's not something that we can just walk into any place and feel like we're safe. So I do understand, and that is part of my bias. But when I discovered that, when I got a little anxious one time, when I was like, ooh, the gas is low and I'm going to you gotta
But that's the reality.
Yeah, that's the reality.
And that's the part that we share with participants. We do go through a lot of these same feelings and thought processes and all of that, just like you. So when we start a new cohort, or we start a training with another organization, we say we are getting ready to form a community, and we're part of this community as well. This is not a lecture type of situation that we're getting ready to engage in. And so within this community, we form norms around, confidentiality, listening, all those kinds of things that will, put parameters around our engagement. But we tell them we're in this just like you. So in each of the trainings that we do, we're actually a part, and we do the same kind of work just like the participants.
That's amazing. And that's I might have to go some of that, get some of that training. Just a couple thoughts pop in my head. I'm like, why am I thinking like that? Why is that happening right now? I don't know what's going on right now. But that's gonna do it for that first segment here on the YWCA Hour. When we come back, a lot more discussion from these two wonderful ladies here on 93.7 ticketfm.com.
In today's digital landscape, the security of your business is non-negotiable. That's why you need better cybersecurity solutions. At Hamilton, we make it our business to protect your network, data, and digital assets with the latest in cybersecurity technology. Our dedicated team of experts has the technology in place to protect what matters most to you and your business. Stay ahead of cyber threats with better cybersecurity protection. Hire Hamilton at hamiltonisbusiness.com.
Riddles Jewelry is excited to be celebrating 65 years. 65 years of so many incredible memories celebrating with each of your special moments. In celebration of the 65th Riddles Jewelry anniversary, we will be offering up to 40% off all engagement rings and all diamond fashion jewelry. The excitement doesn't stop there. Riddles Jewelry is also offering 18 months, 0% interest and $0 down financing on all qualifying purchases. Riddles Jewelry has always been known for incredible customer service, one of the largest selections of engagement rings, and don't forget about the on-site jeweler. Come celebrate with us at Riddles Jewelry, your one-stop diamond shop with exclusive Levian jewelry, Pandora Charm jewelry, and more. All at Riddles inside Gateway Mall.
Ever wish you had another light switch on the other side of the room on a dark night? How much better would you sleep at night if you had a ceiling fan in your room? The High Electric Service Department is here to make your electrical what-ifs a reality. Whether you're looking to replace some outdated light fixtures or brighten up your counters with under-cabinet lighting, High Electric can handle all types of residential electrical installations and services. Give Erica a call at 402-466-6606 or visit high-electric.com to get started.
Your home is your empire. Protect it with Empire Fence. Get a free instant quote with the online estimating tool at empire-fence.com. See an upfront estimate with no hidden fees. An Empire Fence can provide privacy and improve the appearance of your home. Keep kids and pets in or out of your yard. Increase security and add value to your property. Visit empire-fence.com now to view the stylish and maintenance-free possibilities for your home and get a free instant online quote. Let Empire Fence protect your empire.
Rosie Sports Bar and Grill, open for lunch and dinner at 1501 Center Park Road.
Prashawn Jackson here for Bauer Underground, who has been serving local contractors and utility contractors all across the state since 1997. When you see the black and white trucks, you know the baddest dudes in the business have arrived. Bauer is currently looking for equipment operators, laborers, diesel mechanics, and aerial linemen. Join the brotherhood built on hard work, authentic people, and pedigree of success. Bauer, a family-friendly company who reminds you, go Big Red.
Welcome back. YWCA Hour, the W here on 93.7 The Ticket, joined by Maisha Essex and Karen Bell Dancy. We're here in the second segment. I believe we are going to talk about some microaggressions.
Yes, we're going to talk about, so in the first segment, we talked a little bit more about the identity part of it and that self-reflection. And then typically in our training, that's when we start to move into education because people are a little bit more open and aware by the time we get into the education because they are on a mission to kind of expand their capacity now because now they've looked at, all right, this is why I think the way that I think, this is what I'm doing. I want to get better. And so they become a little bit more open to the education piece because it becomes a personal mission at that point.
Yes.
And so we start talking about a variety of topics. And this is where it always gets a little fun. We're talking about different things, one of them being privilege, right? And we've said it before on this podcast when talking about privilege and how that's always interesting to teach because a lot of people just associate it with like economic status.
Right, exactly.
And so you'll get a lot of people saying, well, I also grew up that way. My parents also didn't have a ton of money. And that might be true. And so you were not privileged on an economic status based, but you were privileged in other ways. Were you male? You still had privilege. Were you white? Still have privilege, you know, because in this country, certain things are set up or certain people and classes are set up to exceed a little bit more than those who have to like just climb up, continue to climb. And so that just means you have privilege. You've started at a different spot. When we talk about privilege and people look around the room and some people will say, well, we all still got here. We're all still here. And I said, well, that is absolutely great that we all still made it here. But my journey here was a little bit different.
Right.
While you had to jump through 2 hoops, I had to jump through 7 to get here. And just because I got here doesn't mean that the way that I got here should be the standard for everybody else behind me. And if no is the answer, then we have work to do. And then we also have to look at, well, why was your journey only 2 hoops and mine's was 7,
Mhm.
And so that's when we start to get a little bit more into privilege. That means that there was one hoop you didn't have to jump through that I did. Was that a gender thing? Was that a race thing? Was that a class? Was that economic status? What was that, a language that you did not have to jump through, but I did? And again, should those hoops be there, right? And so we talk about that, and we talk about privilege, and we get a lot of people to kind of understand. A lot of us are privileged in many ways. Education, it can be earned, so
Mhm.
we try to look at that and get people to understand that we do not all start at the same point.
Mhm.
And sometimes society, the way that we're set up, our society allows you to start way ahead of certain people.
Mhm.
So we need to look at that, and is that equitable? And how do we fix that? And how do we address that? And why hasn't it been addressed? Is it because, if I benefit from it, then do I want to? Right. And we all
Right.
benefit from, if you have privilege in some area, that means you're benefiting from something, right? If it's education, for me, we talk about this a lot with
Yes.
like resumes, right? And they'll put on there that you have to have, a college degree for jobs that you do not need one for, right? And we talk about that
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
lot. Like, why do we have this as a requirement when it is definitely not needed?
Mhm.
However, I benefit from that as a person who got it, right? So you might be more qualified to do this particular job, but just because I have the degree, I'll get looked at even if I'm not qualified because they put this there. And so I do understand that my education, of me just saying that I have a degree, opens up
Mhm.
doors for me. We talked about, someone said, I don't have a degree, but my wife does. And our
Oh
time was
yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
We had different journeys in regards and processes in regards to obtaining a job. Hers was way easier. Now she's in a job that she didn't even go to school for. I said, oh, because that
Yep.
degree allowed. I can put that down, and a door open in a field that I never even had any interest in. But just
Right.
because I put down that I have a degree, then there we are.
Mhm.
So I'd like to point out the ways that I have privilege too, as a woman and as a woman of color, the way that I, have privilege, because again, people seriously just think it's about economic status, and it's not in so many ways. So we talk about that. We talk about bias and the different types of bias that we have. We talk about how it's our brain shortcut, because a lot of people, when they think bias, they also think, like, even if we say unconscious bias, they sometimes still think it's overt. Like,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to admit to that, because now you're going to say I'm racist, or I'm a ist,
Exactly.
I'm something. And we're like, no, sometimes your brain will just create this shortcut for you,
Mhm.
and it becomes unconscious. And so you start to treat people in the world a certain way based on that. And so, it was me. Sorry. You start to treat people sorry, based on that. And so we talk about the different types of bias, like confirmation bias. So
Right.
I'll only watch the news that I know will confirm what I already believe. So
Mhm.
that's confirmation bias. We talk about halo bias, where if I see one good thing about somebody, then I just assume they're all great, right?
Everything.
So if
Yep.
on that application they say Harvard, they can do everything, right? If I see
Mhm.
a resume that got Harvard, ooh, this person must be great,
Mhm.
right? Without knowing them, without interviewing them, that's halo bias, right? I mean, and then we have like the opposite of that is horn bias. So if I see one thing
Mhm.
about them that I don't think is great, then I say the whole human, the whole person, all
Oh
their
my God,
experience is
they're
not good.
Presbyterian.
Right. Yeah. So we do that. So we just go
Mhm.
through the different types of bias, that we have: unconscious bias, implicit bias. And then we also talk about like microaggressions. And that's always a fun topic, because when people
Yes.
start sharing with people, especially people of color, especially women, when we start to share what has been said to us, and a lot of times the intention is good, right? So they
Mhm.
they're trying to give you a compliment, but it's like a
The world
backhanded
is full of good intentions.
right
Yeah.
compliment. Like,
Yeah.
we had one person come up to us and say at a training, she's like,
Okay.
"Hey, so glad you all are doing this. So great." Um, she, um, it's 3 Black women educated, and I know they're just real shocked that you're doing this, because you're not up there like, yo, yo, yo. and you're really speaking good.
You speak so well.
And I said, well, oh,
That one. You
Yeah.
speak so well.
speak
That-
so well.
Mhm.
And I said, well, I don't know the language of yo-yo-yo.
Mhm.
So I've never spoken yo-yo-yo before. And who said that? Was there a meeting where they said that, or did you think that and say that and try to put it off?
Mhm.
Because no one who said that, because it was her own opinion. You all, you're not up
Right.
here saying yo-yo-yo. They probably think you're. Is that what y'all said? Like, was there a meeting around that? Or did you really try to give me a compliment? But really at the same time, it was kind of backhanded.
Mhm.
I straightened my hair. Oh, I like the way your hair looks today. It's my natural hair. It's not the look for the office, but it's the straightened hair right here. Oh, you look real pretty today.
Mhm.
Again, it's a compliment. They're trying to compliment my hair, but they don't understand what else they're saying. Where are you really from? Right.
Right.
As another, form of micro aggression. Just touching hair is let me
Yes.
tell you, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I always say, Walmart has been like the biggest place for offenders who touch hair
Right.
to walk through. Because everybody whose hair has been touched, at least once at Walmart. So, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But again, they feel like it's like, oh, your hair. It's like an
Mhm.
exploration thing. I want to touch. And it's like, why are you petting me and touching me? And this is my personal body, especially when you didn't ask prior. Right. So what's happening? You always have that story that you tell about yourself, the woman who touched your skin.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Coming back from my hometown of Kansas City, Missouri, and I was bringing my great niece with me to stay for the summer here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and stopped at a Quick Trip up on the northwest corner of Missouri, and so I noticed the lady kept looking at me and she was real fidgety. And so I get to the counter with my great niece getting ready to pay. And next thing I know, I feel this hand rubbing up my arm. It was summertime. And I jumped and she said, "Oh my goodness, I just been staring at your skin the whole time in here. I just wanted to touch it." And immediately, see, these are the kinds of things that you experience, and everything goes through your head. Do I smack her? What do I record? What do I do? But my whole as I started to process that and what my reaction would be, I was so focused on my great niece who was about 10 at the time. What message do I give her that when things like this happen to her? And so that's what made me say, "Don't you ever touch me again like that." But my reaction was nowhere near the level of the clerk behind the counter and the manager. They were livid. They were livid. She said, "Did she touch you?" And uh the clerk said, "Yes, she touched that lady." The manager said, "Get out of here, get her out of here." And just, and then as I turned around, there happened to be a black guy, like two people behind me, and he said, "I got your back, sister." See, those are those kinds of things, you understand from which part of the community and how you have to be either defensive or offensive. But for me, the biggest piece was, what do I share with my great niece? That this is how society views you, and how looking at the color of my skin, it just infatuated her to the point that she wanted to actually reach out and touch someone. Now she's lucky that, her hand was intact when she pulled it back, but she may not be that lucky the next time. Just like as Maisha talk about people wanting to, touch hair and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so part of what we do with the training is in sharing these kind of stories, and people, when we share these kinds of experiences, and we always tell them it's not a scenario we made up. This is what we actually experience in our daily life. They are like, "Oh my, I would have never done that." Well, wasn't she just trying to say that your skin tone was beautiful or whatever? And we have to really work through that educational component of why that is not accepted.
Yeah. We're not pets. What is it saying to us? What is the message that's behind the action or what you're saying?
Yes.
If you have the ability to just without permission, right, to
Mhm.
touch our body,
Right.
right? Let's think about where
In
that
our
started and
space.
where that came from.
Right.
Without permission, you just have the ability
Mhm.
to walk up to me and just
Mhm.
touch my body,
Mhm.
and treat me as if I'm not human and a pet,
Mhm.
right? So what is that saying, and why would we react that way? For someone to just
Mhm.
come up, whether it was the intention was, I really like your skin tone, or I really want to, I like the way your hair. I've never been able to touch your hair like that, or
Right.
whatever the intention is. It does not negate the impact, and we
Mhm.
always have to talk about that. It
Mhm.
did, what was the outcome, and just because your intention was a certain way or you meant it a certain way doesn't mean that the impact didn't land. And so
Mhm.
you have to connect with the impact of what you actually did.
Right.
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 And you can be educated as to why, as a Black person, I wouldn't want somebody to just randomly touch my body and feel like they have the authority to just touch my body
Mhm.
and do
Mhm.
whatever they want to do with
Mhm.
my body. And I should just accept it,
Right.
you know?
After having been stared at so much.
Mhm.
And, to be honest, as we get more and more understanding and knowledgeable about where we come from and our ancestors, our ancestors were the ones that were put in cages and were part of the sideshow. And then different parts of our body, the crowd came and they were ooh and ah and, made fun of. Understand that that's where all that energy started. And now that privilege has come down through that. And as Maisha say, you just have the right to just violate me as an individual. And you're saying, oh, it was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Right.
So we get a lot of pushback sometimes.
Well, yeah, just because they are trying to, again, talk about their intention behind it, which
Justify.
I can understand the intention, right? I'm not saying that your intention wasn't true. Like, I really didn't mean that when I said that. And I get it. And that's great. And I always say, with intention versus impact, your intention will allow me to forgive you quicker, right? Because I know that's not what you meant.
Mhm.
I know you as a person. So I may be able to forgive you a little
Mhm.
bit quicker and let that door open for forgiveness.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And I always use the step on my foot as an example. If you step on my
Yes.
feet with a heel and you say, ooh, my bad, I'm sorry, it still hurt.
Right.
You saying sorry does not take away the pain. You saying sorry does not take away the action. It still hurt. But because I know it was an accident, or because I know you, I'll just try to, that's okay. Thank you. Ouch. I understand you didn't
Mhm.
mean to. It's
Right.
crowded space. We're bumping up against each other. We can do that. And so that's one of the things that we talk about. Again, that's a big thing, is an intention versus impact. And,
Mhm.
and both parties being on the receiving end, right? So, if you uh, offended someone, right? Um, you have to deal with that, right?
Mhm.
You have to deal with it. Okay. I can't make the person who was offended somehow forgive you. So you have to be open, because I think a lot of the places, especially in the work that we do now, um, we all want to create this a certain type of environment. So a lot of us, especially if we're in the space too, at some times, to educate and be like, why, or to just be like, no, or to say something back, right? So as the person who is receiving, you have to be open to a little bit of correction. And that's
Mhm.
hard, because that means you did something wrong, right?
Right.
And we don't want to
Yeah.
do anything wrong. And I think fundamentally, we don't want to offend anyone. And so we go into defense mode, because I don't want to defend you. So you have to
Mhm.
be open to that correction. And as the person who offended, you also have to be open to just correction with no explanation.
Mhm.
And so we've had people say, well, she didn't say why, right?
Mhm.
She just told me don't touch my hair.
Right.
But she didn't say why. Now, that is a very rudimentary example, because a lot of us can probably, well, I would think you would understand the why. She doesn't
Mhm.
need to explain that. But we have other examples of things happening where, she just told me no, and didn't say why. So I don't know how, to grow from that. And that's
Mhm.
understandable, right? Because if you don't understand, you do not. And so when you go to training and education like this, when we get examples of those, we can try to elaborate and explain what we
Yeah.
think. Again, we're not that person. So we cannot come 100% from what they are saying. But here is look at it from this perspective is what we can do. So you have to be open to that. And then we do have people who are becoming more open to having these conversations and educating. We just tell people who may be offended or do not understand that do not expect them to do that, because microaggressions are like mosquito bites. Have you ever seen that video? Because it's happening all day.
Yeah.
It's all day. It's happening so often, right? I'm being followed all the time every time I go into a store.
Exactly.
Or the fact that I have to rearrange myself just so it won't happen. Do I carry something into Target that I know I bought from Target? Do I make it visible when I walk into Target so no one thinks when I'm walking out of Target that I took it and I stole it?
The other person that doesn't look like me, that's never a thought. For them.
Yeah. So we have those conversations of like different perspectives and what you have to look at. And because it's happening all the time, they may not be in the space to educate and explain in the moment. And so, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just a lot of little things that add up, and you don't even think sometimes if you're not, the person that it's happening to, you don't even think about it. You don't even notice it. And it's just things that, and then somebody mentions like, well, I didn't notice it. I was like, you didn't notice it because it didn't happen to you. You just walked right by and nothing happened, but I was right behind you and they had to check my receipt.
Yep. Yeah.
We had the same cart full of things. They checked my receipt. They didn't check yours.
Exactly. And that becomes a blind spot. We do an identity activity, and it goes through like 5 or 6 questions about your identity. Like what part of your identity do you want to learn more about? What identity identifier do you not really think about? And so it's this wheel of identity, and we have different identifiers like race, gender, ethnicity, religion, language, and all of those things. And I always ask after that assignment, well, which question was the most important to you? And then they'll go say, the identity that people most view me by, or the identity that I want people to actually get. They'll say things like that. But the one thing that they don't ever say that I always bring up, I always say number 2, I think it's like number 2 on there. The most important question is, for me, is identities that you think the least about, because those become your blind side, as you just described, blind spots, as you described, Rico. Those become the blind spots. If you never think about language, then you're not thinking about language when you're engaging with other people. You're not thinking about language when you're creating policy. You're not thinking about language because you never think about it, right? I'm not thinking about that until somebody brings it to your attention that, hey, we need to translate these documents into, but you don't think about it. I never think about religion, right? Because we live in a community where Christianity, right, is the number one. So I don't think about that, and how some of the things that I'm doing might affect you and what you believe in and how you practice. I don't think about it, right? And so I always say, when we do that identity wheel, to me, that question becomes really important in regards to how we engage and set up our environment, because those are your blind spots. You don't think about them.
Blind spots. Look at you. Look at you. I'm telling you. How many times I almost got in an accident because of a blind spot?
Right.
And that's just driving a car. You think about just life.
Exactly.
But hey, that's the second segment here. We got one more when we come back. The YWCA Hour here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com.
In today's digital landscape, the security of your business is non-negotiable. That's why you need better cybersecurity solutions. At Hamilton, we make it our business to protect your network, data, and digital assets with the latest in cybersecurity technology. Our dedicated team of experts has the technology in place to protect what matters most to you and your business. Stay ahead of cyber threats with better cybersecurity protection. Hire Hamilton at hamiltonisbusiness.com.
Riddles Jewelry is excited to be celebrating 65 years. 65 years of so many incredible memories, celebrating with each of your special moments. In celebration of the 65th Riddles Jewelry anniversary, we will be offering up to 40% off all engagement rings and all diamond fashion jewelry. The excitement doesn't stop there. Riddles Jewelry is also offering 18 months, 0% interest and $0 down financing on all qualifying purchases. Riddles Jewelry has always been known for incredible customer service, one of the largest selections of engagement rings, and don't forget about the on-site jeweler. Come celebrate with us at Riddles Jewelry, your one-stop diamond shop with exclusive Levian jewelry, Pandora Charm jewelry, and more. All at Riddles inside Gateway Mall.
Ever wish you had another light switch on the other side of the room on a dark night? How much better would you sleep at night if you had a ceiling fan in your room? The High Electric Service Department is here to make your electrical what-ifs a reality. Whether you're looking to replace some outdated light fixtures or brighten up your counters with under-cabinet lighting, High Electric can handle all types of residential electrical installations and services. Give Erica a call at 402-466-6606 or visit high-electric.com to get started. Welcome back, YWCA Hour, the W here on 93.7 The Ticket. Final segment here on a beautiful day, joined by Maisha Essex and Karen Bell Dancy, not Darcy, Dancy. I promise you, we're going to get that right.
Thank you.
Let you guys take it away.
Yeah. So again, we were just talking about some of the education components to our training. We just hit on a few. We can actually spend a podcast on each theme, multiple podcasts on each theme in regards to some of the education piece. But going outside of the education piece, the last tier that we have with our training platform is the action. We know a lot of people are in the space where they feel like they've received enough education, or not enough, but enough to get started of education. And they go to trainings and they're like, what now? If this is all really good information, but how do we apply this to our workspace? And so what we like to do is every time we do have a training, every session, we always give them something to take away. So even like the identity wheel and things of that nature, well, take this and implement this at your next staff meeting. So here are some things that you all can start doing and talk about. We do a lot of videos they can take back to their staff. But one thing that we do, particularly with the GARE, we don't do this with every training organization that we train, is we do a DEI audit. It's always fun. And they get to do an audit of their workspace and to see how inclusive it really is. And there's all these different sectors in which they get to audit. And a lot of the people that we work with, they answer to someone there. They have a supervisor. And so it's always interesting when that process gets started, because there are a lot of questions that's asked about our environment and what we're doing and policies and statements and, what's going on in regards to our workspace. And are we being transparent? Is it visible? And that's the thing that I love to talk about when we do the audit is, well, I don't know if we have that, because we'll do an initial conversation. And I don't know, I said, well, then you need to mark that needs improvement, because that means it's not visible. Right. And so what can we do for this to be a little bit more visible? Is it something that you learned during orientation and never went back to? Right. But if it's so important, it needs to be integrated into our everyday work space, then it should be something that we're constantly going back to and revisiting. And so if that's not the case, then we need to put needs improvement. Right. And so we do an audit. We take them through the different objectives. They come back. They let us know what they found. Right. They let us know the reception as well
to the project.
And it's not them. They have anything. They love doing it. But the reception of knocking on doors and being like, hey, what's going on? And can you give me some answers here? And people having to answer that. That's always interesting, because they're like, what are you doing?
Right. Because, most organizations, you get a strategic plan. Hey, we got it done. Put it on the shelf. We'll not revisit in 5 years. And what this project is saying, we need to constantly look at our policies and our processes and all our procedures, the way that we operate. And we need to make sure that we look at it through a real lens of equity and inclusion. So that's a whole new dynamic for a lot of organizations. It's like, oh, that's what this project is about. Why did they give you that project?
And so that the reception is always great. But again, we tell people, especially participants who believe, oh, I can't do anything. I can't make a change. I'm not the one making the decisions. We always tell them, you just knocking on a door is doing so much, because you're one of 50 of participants in here. Right. And so just asking the question, a lot of times things are not brought to the forefront because no one will even ask the question at times. But if you're starting to ask the question, then your fellow department coworkers also asking the questions, then we can start even getting the door open after we knock. Like, let's just see where we can go. But we also tell participants, there are so much things that you can just do in your space. It doesn't have to be big. We're not expecting you to somehow solve equity and inclusion. I mean, because if that was the case, then we wouldn't be here. Like if we had the answer, the 100%
Right.
answer on how to,
Right.
we wouldn't be here. It's an evolving process. It's a discussion. It's just being open to being welcoming and inclusive and expanding your capacity so that everybody feels engaged and supported in your space. And so that's all we're trying to do here. And so we have them look at, even if it's like the room that we're in right now, if this is your space, is it inclusive, right? Who's on the
Mhm.
wall when somebody walks into your space, right? Who are they seeing when they walk in, right? How are you greeting them, right? And so it can be something as little as that. It can be looking at, we talked about language. How's things being translated? And so we just walk them through just all the different things that they can do, no matter what the scale is, like how big
Mhm.
they deem it is. Because I say, whatever you do, it's moving the needle. And so
Mhm.
I don't say a big or small project, whatever you can do to move the dial, to move the needle. Let's see how we can do that, because all of us have the power to do something.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want them to take away, is that we all have the power to do something, and let's start here. So that's what we do with our
Mhm.
our action piece.
And at the end, when we culminated Gear 1.0, so this was a year-long engagement. We had presentations. The presentations were so powerful. So the participants really did the work. They went back to their various departments, and they really worked hard on it. And like Maisha said, just the fact that now they were asking the questions. Some of them brought in like their immediate supervisor and other from their departments to see the presentations. And now it really makes sense for them, the culmination of their work. And so we were excited to then be asked to do a second cohort. So currently we are in year 2. We're talking with the Human Services Division that wants us to consider a third cohort, because they are really interested in that all of their professionals would have the same type of training and have the same baseline of understanding around DEI. So we know how important the work is, just because of a lot of the rhetoric that we hear around DEI. We talked about that on previous shows. And so we want to continue to keep doing this kind of work here in the community. We're so happy that last year, during the State of the City address, our mayor talked about having all city employees to be engaged in this level of training. So within our current group, we have 25 different departments that are represented by participants in there. So within our community, we have a real good understanding of how important this work is and what it means for Lincoln as a welcoming community. So we are excited about it. We will continue to do this work. If there are other organizations that would like to have a conversation with us of how that could look for them, we don't only work with the government. We also work with other nonprofits, as Maisha mentioned, some of those organizations before. We work with business, educational institutions. And so we can have those kind of conversations with them as they want to get started.
Well, Maisha, Karen, before we go, let the people know how they can get in contact with you guys.
Oh, absolutely. You can visit us at our website, YWCALincoln.org. You can come and visit us at our building, which is 5631 South 48th Street, Suite 410. We're always excited to have you come and visit us and learn a little bit more about us. As Karen said, if you want to engage with us, whether it's to volunteer or to have us come out and do some of these trainings with you, you can let us know through our website. There is a email that you can click on, or a link that you can click on to send us an email to get in contact with us. If you feel so inclined to donate as well, that is an option on our website as well.
Yes.
Thank you both so much for another wonderful show.
Thank
Just
you,
let everybody
Rico.
know. Keep your hands to yourself.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Keep your hands. What are you doing? We'll talk to you next week on the YWCA